Thank you, Abusami, with that great session. So we would like to invite our next guest speaker,
Yes.
Mr. Ganesh Jatadharan. Hope Ganesh is available already. Okay. Hi, Ganesh. Good morning.
Thank
If
you,
you are
sir.
available.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So thank you, Abusami. Thank you. So we are
Thank you,
talking
sir.
about our very important session, business process improvements in fleet management by Mr. Ganesh Jatadharan. So let me give a quick introduction about Ganesh. Ganesh is an excellence driving leader with a background in leading transformation initiatives. His experience includes finance process transformation at Standard Chartered, strategy consulting at Capgemini and Avalon, and energy efficiency consulting with CII. What else you want? Okay. So he specializes in management, energy, and green consulting. So with this, I take an opportunity to invite Ganesh ji to the session. So happy to see you again, Ganesh ji. We worked together in Arasco, Busami. So
Yes,
Ganesh
sir.
was one of the consultant when we worked there in
Yes,
Arasco.
yes. I remember him, sir.
Yeah. So
I
that's a
remember
great
him.
opportunity. Yeah. So let us hear from Ganesh about the best practices of fleet management. Okay. With his
Yes.
cumulative experience. So let us welcome. So over to you, Ganesh. Thank you very much.
Still, we have one of your. We have one of your team, Jilani. We still will have one of your. I can't say he's an expert, yes, but he's he's your student, as me
Yeah.
as I am. Jilani is still continuing as a consultant in the Arasco.
He's there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Please carry on.
Great. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Abdul Qadir ji, for the benevolent introduction about myself. I hope my screen is visible. Let me share my presentation. My presentation is visible, Abdul Qadir ji.
Yes, Mr. No, yes, Mr. Ganesh. Yes. So no.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is visible now.
In the
Okay.
presentation mode, Ganesh. So
Yeah.
it is not in the presentation mode. So it is a little tricky in this WebEx. Okay. So you need to, so actually, you need to put the presentation into a presentation mode and then share the screen and select the
Oh, okay.
presentation one. That is a tricky little.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Let me actually do
Or
that. 1 minute.
to go to PPT mode, so which you cannot operate.
Yeah, 1 second. Let me just try that. Yeah, okay. So let us go to the, and now is it visible? Full presentation mode?
It is perfect now. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so this is the second time I am actually attending this seminar. Thanks a lot for inviting me, Abdul Qadir ji. Abdul Qadir ji was mentioned, I have actually worked with him for on many occasions, especially in the Arasco engagement, and we share long association with him. Thanks a lot for inviting. So with that, let me basically jump into the presentation. So basically there are two parts to this presentation. The first part is introducing, like how I did last time, and many of you would have attended, but like how I'll start off with the basics of how this topic of business process improvements or process excellence, what is the theory, or what is the fundamental construct of this process excellence and business process improvement area, is something I'll focus on the first part. Probably I'll just spend little time, 5-10 minutes on that, and after that I'll move to a topic wherein how do we actually go about implementing it, especially in a fleet management concept. So I currently work for a fleet management firm, in India, and this fleet management firm has around 18,000 cars, wherein we operated on the platforms of Uber, on the platforms of a local Indian player called Ola. So, how do we go about, implementing these business process improvements or bringing about process excellence for this fleet management is what I will try and share. Of course, I'll also refer you to some other previous experience I've had over the past, years. I have worked on this process excellence. So that in a nutshell are the two parts. One is the theory part. Next is the actual practical implementation of how this theory is getting implemented. So these two are the parts in which I will try and cover in this presentation. So just to make sure that what are we talking about? We are talking about process excellence. So to make it clear as to generally, if we mean by say a process excellence team within an organization, so I'm not a consultant to this firm. I'm an employee and heading leading the process excellence vertical within this fleet management firm. So when we mean process excellence within an organization, what do we mean? Let's clarify the objectives and role. At least what we are trying to do within the fleet management firm is what I will talk about. So we are clearly a catalyst to support and help business functions achieve its own goal of process excellence. So I was very clear to articulate it, saying that it is the goal of the business function to excel in their process, and our team basically is a catalyst for them to achieve its goal. So we are not the business function ourselves, so we are very clear in making sure that we know who our customer is. So our customers are the business functions, it's not the end customer. So from a process excellence team perspective, my customer basically is my business function, and I am here. So my purpose is to support them achieve their process excellence goals. So that's very clear in terms of what we want to basically do. So that's step one. And we are a central team. We are not aligned only to one department or one support function. We are basically a central team wherein we'll offer cross functional support to any team in the fleet management business that we are in. So fleet management, when one imagines, you will only imagine about operations. You will only imagine say about attending to say the drivers of the fleet, or the drivers of the vehicles, right? But it also spans beyond. How do we onboard the driver onto the vehicle? How do we actually have say a finance function which is auguring well to this fleet management? How do we have an HR function? So there are multiple functions, because I'm talking about a fleet size of 18,000 vehicles, wherein these 18,000 vehicles play on platform of Uber, and we hire drivers to run these vehicles. So vehicles are owned by us, so we hire drivers, or basically we lease out our cars to the drivers. Driver are like our partners or are like our customers. They pay us rentals to ride these cars, and then they get onboarded onto the Uber platform. So that's basically the business model. So our role is to basically support the business functions to do these things properly. So that's in essence the objective and role of this particular team of process excellence. Right? And how do we go about doing it? So we have a framework developed. So this framework in essence has three pillars which we call to make this framework. First pillar is about having standard operating procedures, or a process library which is rendered as process maps with its own key performance indicators. For example, a process which is basically literally drawn into various boxes, developing to be an SOP. And this SOP every process should have a key performance indicator. If a process is not with a performance indicator, then we might as well scrap the process. So each process needs to be accompanied by a key performance indicators, right? And so that is the first pillar about having a process which is clearly articulated and standardized. So what is the need of standardization? This organization, like I was telling, it's large with 18,000 vehicles, and it is also spread across several cities. We are operating at at 7 cities within India, looking at also expanding to other horizons outside India also. So it's very important for us to have a process standard, or at least have the goal of standardizing the process. So it is very important that these processes are standardized through a process library, and then it is structured and streamlined across all these 7 cities. So that's the first vertical of having a process which is of a particular standard. And the standard can be at a particular level, and we can keep improving it. Okay, but at least defining at a particular standard with a process library, a KPI, and a process map. So that's the first vertical of the or the first pillar of this framework for excellence. Next is having a clear governance structure so that people simply follow the process. It's not just enough to define the process. It is important that everybody in the organization tries to follow the process. That, in a sense, is the second vertical. The third vertical is all about making sure we improve it periodically so that the standard improves. If I'm operating at a particular level, according to vertical 1, the third vertical challenges that first vertical so that you improve it and go to the next level, and a new standard is created. We again challenge it. Third vertical, so the third level is actually achieved. So likewise, we improve the standards of the process periodically. So this way it becomes like a continuous feedback loop between 1, 2 and 3. So 1 feeds off to 2, and 3 basically challenges 1 and 2, and a new process is created, and a governance structure has actually been introduced. So that, in a sense, is the 1, 2, 3 loop that we have created within the organization, and we'll try to be a catalyst to the organization to do this. This, in a sense, is what is the framework. I spoke about it last time also. Last time, however, speaking for fleet management, I was talking about the process standardization in detail. We discussed about business process model notation and how we go about doing it in detail. So this time I wanted to use the opportunity to talk a little more details into mainly business transformation, the process improvement aspect, given the topic of my seminar this time about process improvement. I thought, let me focus on business process improvements and transformation, and probably slightly touch upon the governance aspect so that you know what I'm talking about in terms of governance. I'm not going to discuss about how do we make processes standard through business process model implementation. I'm going to switch to 3 mainly, touch upon 2 briefly. Okay. So this is the context and objective of today's meeting. I thought first is to introduce into this theory of this, and then I'll actually go to the respective areas of 2 and 3. So Abdul Qadir ji, if I am going too fast or too slow, please feel free to interject.
Yeah, it's okay because this is a very important part. It's okay, it's a good enough. Yeah, please continue.
Okay.
Meanwhile, I'll just pose some questions where, posted in YouTube kind of thing. So I'll just remind you in a minute.
Sure. I'm not able to see the screen. I'm just in the presentation mode.
Oh,
So
you
you can.
I'll keep watching it. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Okay. Now on to the process governance. I'll just take probably just a couple of slides to explain this process governance, the second framework that I was talking about. How do we go about in a very structured manner implementing this governance standards, right? And how do we ensure that people follow the process standards that we have set for ourselves is what I'm going to explain in terms of going about actually doing it. And this is something that we are into heavily in our organization now, and I'll explain probably with a few examples also in the next slide as to what is the way that we have done it and what is the benefit that we are deriving it, because this also actually leads into many benefits of just making sure people follow the process. So uh, I'll first tell you the framework around process governance, and I'll give you practical examples. So the framework for process governance essentially is, first is assess the process adherence level, basically at a city level, which is regional level, and at a central level. What do we mean by assessment? Assessment is simply about performing something like an audit. So we actually call it as a process audit. Okay. And this process audit essentially understands whether the unit in question is following the central process that we have laid down. Let me give an example. Like say in fleet management, I have basically, have given various standard operating procedures that my various cities have to follow, be it Mumbai. So I'm actually speaking from Mumbai, be it Mumbai or be it Hyderabad or Chennai or Bangalore or various cities that we operate out of from. So the processes that has been centrally designed are those being followed by these local units, is in a sense is a process adherence concept. And to measure this, we publish something called as a process audit score. So first is, I physically go to the city level, and in each of the city there will be multiple hubs. Visit all these hubs, understand, through a structured questionnaire. So this will be a long checklist of questions we'll have. Understand, you know what, you are supposed to have your vehicles parked in particular base. Okay. Are you parking it in particular base? Is one example of a checkpoint. The other checkpoint could be, are you actually marking the vehicles to be fit for driving to drivers? And there will be a checklist of questions to ensure the fitness of the vehicle. If these vehicles are not actually fit for to be driven, then the person locally should mention that, what, this is not fit for driving. It should be sent again for, say, to the workshop or the garage for repair. So that rejection process needs to be followed. Likewise, there were a list of 150 such questions which we developed, and we went to the city, and at the local city, there are hubs which are there in the city. We try to understand whether they are following these processes or not. Through that, we track the non-compliance, which is what is mentioned here. Right? Let me have a pointer. Yeah. So we basically track the non-compliance, right? And once the non-compliance is basically understood, tracked, we publish something called as a audit score. For example, my city in Chennai, on a score of 100, they initially got only a score of 30. So their score was only 30 out of 100, meaning of the 100 checkpoints I have got, only 30 checkpoints were complying to the central process that we basically audited. So their score was 30. Now we update something called as risk register if there are any of the remaining 70 non-compliances. If there are any risks that are arising out of non-compliance, we update a separate risk register. And most importantly, we make sure through continuous engagement with the local cities and hub that these processes are adhered to.
Mhm.
Now, this one line of writing ensure adherence to standard process, so actually runs into months together. I'll give you an example. I completed the audit in the month of September for the organization, and we are talking about December. And out of the 7 cities, say 3 cities have crossed around 80% complaints or 75% complaints, so as to speak. The remaining are still yet to actually make changes locally, put in together, a lot of corrective actions and preventive actions to ensure they adhere to the standard process. So it's like a very intense engagement and a tough engagement that we have with the local cities, so that they buy into the suggestions that we make, buy into the central process, and they start changing things locally. Because I'm talking about a list of around 150 such checklist points, each of them not being compliant to the extent of around 100 odd points not being compliant. We'll have to move these 100 points to compliance. Right? So that's about ensuring adherence. This is a very tough part. Part 1, 2, 3, 4 essentially easy. It will only take probably a couple of weeks. This will take months together, at least from our experience. Once that is there, we again align. So we actually make sure that these are adhered. Now, other important point is may not be looping in from this to this, but it is standalone point where we make sure that this governance aspect is part of the unit's KPI. For example, the score of 30% or 40% or 80%, if it needs to be made effective, this also needs to be part of the organization's KPI and KRA structure, saying that what, you only scored a percentage of 30, hence accordingly you will be docked down in your performance rating also. So it's very important to align the organization or this particular process governance towards the organization goal also, so that people take it seriously. right? So this, in a sense, is the governance framework that we basically follow. Now, the next slide is about, after having done this. So there were units which actually reached the 70%, 80% mark. This is actually a practical example of what were the benefits they derived by doing this. There were two types of benefits. One is the qualitative benefit, and next is the quantitative benefit. Qualitative benefits essentially talks about things like, hey, did the experience of our customer, which is a driver, improve, or do we have a better upkeep of our cars, or things which cannot be measured easily. Quantitative is largely about there were improvements in terms of scores, there were improvements in terms of actual reduction in hours attending to the drivers, so things like that. So I just probably touch upon a couple of examples which we actually derived from one of the cities. These are all practical examples to tell you what exactly happened in these cities. So let me start with quantitative. Probably people may be able to relate it easier than qualitative. Quantitative was the DSAT score, the driver satisfaction score. Given the drivers are my customers, I own the cars and driver takes the cars for lease, drivers are my customers. So the DSAT score actually moved from less than 4 level to above 4 level. The drivers actually started to begin happy that they were being attended to faster, they were actually being given better quality of vehicles and things like that. So in their satisfaction scores actually improve. Their swapping of car, for example, I'm a driver, I have a car, but I'm actually not happy with the car, right? And I change the car, right? So that number of cars, that number of swaps per 1,000 in the month of September, that dropped to 334 in the month of November. Meaning, because of the audit process of the cars which are being done within the the city and the hub which we had, right, the quality of cars which goes to the fitness level improved, and there were lower rejection of cars from the driver, and there was no need for them to swap cars. They don't need, so there was no need for them to come back to the hub, take another car, get it replaced with a better car. So that need got reduced, so their time in turn got saved of coming to our hub and taking a different vehicle. So I hope I am making it clear. So let me repeat. So drivers actually have the cars. They, if they are not happy with the car, they can come and swap in our hubs. Now, by making sure the process of repair and the process of inspecting the cars improve because of the process audit, the swapping of the cars by the driver reduced from 1,000 in the month of September to 334. So this was like a good beneficial change with the organization and the driver, because it affects multiple metrics in terms of time spent by the company, organization, time spent by the driver, all those things. So that was one of the quantitative benefits. The other benefit was the drivers raise tickets on on we have a tool, and the resolution time for attending to these tickets dropped from 3 hours to 1.5 hours. Okay.
Mhm.
So these were some examples of initiatives by doing certain improvement areas, either on the driver experience side or on the vehicle management side or in the control side, that we brought about by doing these steps only. By doing an audit, we found non-compliance to the central process that we derived, because processes are defined, people are just not following it. Now, by making sure they follow it, these were the benefits that we were able to derive. Right? So this was, I mean, let me go back to the framework slide. This was the process governance aspect, which I am basically talking about as to how we went about, implementing the governance and how the benefits were actually derived. So this was process governance and execution along with benefits. Now I will pause for just about 5 seconds to check, or I can go to the third section, which is about the fleet improvement aspect. I'll probably spend the next 30 minutes there, and the remaining 5-10 minutes can be for questions. We can go to the next section if there are any questions. Abdul Qadir.
Okay. Ganesh, there is a question.
Yeah.
So do you have a process? Uh, Let me read that question. So what is the process done to take care of the passenger safety to avoid any unwanted problems, especially women? Okay. So is that process included in your overall process list? Yeah.
Yeah. So the question, just to reiterate, is for passenger safety, do you have a process, correct?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So there are two types, or there are two areas in which we have process safety developed. One is at a platform provider level, the service provider, which in the cases could be Ola, Uber, all those people will have, their own passenger safety embedded, which is one layer. And
Mhm.
given that it is not in our remit, we don't, enter into that zone. Coming
Mhm.
to the vehicle, and because the rider actually uses the vehicle, so we have a set of process. We have certain, set of checkpoints to make sure the vehicle is fit to be, ridden along with the safety features. Example of safety feature can be ranging from a very basic safety feature of having seat belts in place properly, both the front seat, back seat. That's like very safety simple safety feature. The other checklist can be, having, things like Tommy, Pana, Jack, Stepney, all these parking, everything there. And this was actually part of this, swapping of car checklist also, which we actually have there, and we ensure that all these are there. The other most important thing is having an SOS, button in each of the cars to ensure that every car has an SOS button. The other thing is having GPS tracking of all these cars. GPS are, installed in all these cars. We know where these cars are. So if there is, anything that needs to be attended to the car on, emergency, where the car is, where the vehicle is, we can attend to it. So there are, these from a fleet management side, we have got all these process baked in, which is part of this SOP that we make sure. Of course, when we see on the ground, there will be a lot of non-compliances which will come, and we publish an audit score. This audit score basically points out to the gaps, and hence I told you, there are, non-compliances in terms of percentages being ranging from 30 to 80. Once we do that, the result will be seen in terms of what is the number of complaints we get on the cars, all those things, and the driver satisfaction score also.
Mhm.
Yeah, I hope that answers Abdul
Yeah,
Kader.
yeah. Yes, please. Please continue.
Okay. So the third vertical, or the third, part of the framework is the business process transformation or business process improvement vertical. So I have a process which I've told you, which is defined. I have basically a governance which will ensure through an audit that everybody follows this. Now this is like a static, process. Now unless I challenge this static process, I will not be able to improve, आगे. I will not be able to go up, in terms of my level. So I basically challenge this through this business process transformation an aspect. And what we have started to do in our firm, or we just trying to explore this. We have just done a few experiments and areas in the organization where we are using lean principles to challenge the status quo. So probably, I mean, people may be aware, may not be aware. So if they are aware, pardon my repetition, but I'm assuming, some people may not be aware. Hence, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes in explaining the core principles, the 5 core principles of lean, and then, trying to tell you again. This is the theory part of lean, the transformation, and then I'll take you to examples, two specific aspects of the lean, which we call as a foundation of lean, and how are we going about implementing it practically in our organization. So that's the construct of this particular section. So 5 core principles of lean. Let me actually go a little faster in explaining the 5 core principles. One is most important thing is understanding who our customer is and defining what is of value to the customer. So in our case, the customer is the driver who will take the car and go and he will ride it on Uber's platform, right? and we should understand what does the, in my case, the driver want, right? What is of value to him? So that's the most important thing. If it and this can be different for different people in the organization. For example, I'm part of the process excellence team. So my customer, like I was mentioning earlier, is not the driver directly. It is the business function that I support. So I need to treat them like customer, which means I need to treat them like kings, so that I find what is a value to them and accordingly redesign my framework, my principle, so that it adds value to them. If you don't add value, then I'll have to question the existence of my team itself. So hence it is very important to understand what is of value to the customer. Now, ensuring that this flow, me as an individual gives to that customer, flows continuously. So the flow of value needs to be seamless without any disturbances, or in lean parlance is called muda or waste. So no complexity, direct, adding value to the customer, and ensuring that this flow without any complexity and waste is also directly connected to the customer's demand. For example, a high demand, then I'll have to actually meet it properly. Low demand, then I need to scale down. So I need to go up and down according to the vagaries of the customer's demand. If I do not match this vagaries with the flow, then I'm going to create inefficiency in the system, either in terms of inventory or in terms of customer waiting for me to give this thing. So these three are the core values or core principles of lean. To repeat it, what are the value to the customer? My flow should be continuous, no complexities, and it should actually go up and down according to the demand of the customer. Now, for this, the most important part. The most important part is, it is not me as process excellence team actually driving it. It is make suring through the management, the employees are empowered to do that. What is the meaning of this? The meaning is, assuming I've got say 1,000 employees in the organization, especially the people that are on the ground who know the customer's demand really well, needs to basically be accountable for this improvement. They know the problem very clearly. Me sitting in a corner cabin or me sitting in part of HO may not be fully aware of what's actually happening. I will only have a filtered version of what the customer actually wants. So the person who will know the customer, who actually knows the pain of the customer, is the frontline person. So the framework should enable in such a way that these people on the ground are empowered to manage, improve the process, and made accountable for improvement. So this is the most important aspect. How we go about doing it is one example I've got. I'll actually tell you practically how we go about doing it. Right? And fifth is ensuring 1, 2, 3, 4 happens continuously. Creating the environment so that it happens continuously. Okay. So this is a core principle of the core 5 principles of lean. Now, generally, the benchmarks have shown this value add to the customer, which is the first principle, is only the small green portion of all the activities that an organization does. You can take any organization in the world, 70% of what you do, okay, in your organizations is invariably going to be a waste. It is only around 30% at best that you are adding value to the customer, which means the remaining 70% is clearly a waste. Waste are two types. One is a necessary waste. Next is a clear waste, an outright waste. Matlab, those waste, which is the red wala, which is red portion, needs to be very clearly avoided, and it is still happening in our organizations. I need not come to your organization, but I can tell you without even moving, from my seat, that I can tell you 40% of what your organization most probably doing is just going as a waste. In terms of the 8-9 hours that you are spending time, is going as a waste. The remaining, uh, uh, 2-3 hours is necessary, but still you are still not adding value. That probably, of the 8 hours or 9 hours, 2-3 hours is what you are adding value to the customer directly. Okay, so we define it as this 8 types of waste. I'm not going to spend time on these worm pit model. If people are interested, probably Google up lean and waste, you will get all explanations videos on this, but I highly encourage you to do that, right? So this acronym is called WORMPIT. So WORMPIT, let me repeat, WORMPIT. So the acronyms here, WORMPIT plus one more added called intellect. So WORMPIT plus one is a type of waste that any organization faces, and this is essentially what we have to focus on. How do we reduce the so the necessary, the non-value add. NVA stands for non-value add, so which is clearly a waste. This necessary non-value add. Not necessary non-value add is this training that you're undergoing. Is basically like how do I put it? It's actually the meetings that you conduct to meet the customer. You cannot do away with it. Regulatory compliance, you cannot do away with it, but you'll have to actually meet those things. So those are necessary non-value. So this is the principle of lean. Now there are two elements which I will touch upon. But one is the which will help you overcome this red portion. Okay. The first is the thing called A3 thinking. So A3 thinking, I don't know how many of you know, but it's a very structured problem solving approach introduced by Toyota in the 1960s. What essentially this does is it will make sure the fourth principle I spoke to you about, which is the empowering of employees, is very clearly done in a structured manner so that the organization adds value to the customer. Okay, what is this A3? A3 is a very step-by-step approach towards problem solving, and it is nothing but a simple piece of paper which is A3 size. So that's why it's called A3. You're all familiar with A4 sheet, like as you also have an A3 sheet. You just write down these 11 steps on a piece of paper, like this. These formats are available on the internet. You can just Google it up, and you just basically have this particular piece of paper in A3. When I mean paper, it is a paper which we actually kind of take and write. Of course, you can use an Excel sheet to actually do this, but take a printout and put it on your desk. That's why it's actually A3 piece of paper. Starting from what is the problem or what is the change or improvement that you're talking about. Once that change or improvement that you're talking about is identified, for example, the question somebody asked, passenger safety is not adequate, can be a problem, right? That can be the theme. So I want to improve passenger safety. Now once that is done, the second most important step is identifying who is going to lead this project. Now assuming this has come from the frontline employee, right, in one of the discussions they have got either with their manager or with their bosses, they basically say that what, this is a theme that I'm going to talk about, and identify a leader who will drive this project. The second step is identify the leader who will drive it, is number two. This leader to do basically steps 3, 4, and 5. Yeah, and 6 as well. 3, 4, 5, and 6. What does he do? He elaborates this passenger improvement into a problem statement. What is the current situation? What, passenger safety is actually being questioned. There are a lot of complaints coming from riders and drivers about passenger safety. Could be a problem statement with quantified. Probably have a DSAT score or a CSAT score which is written here, and then tell what is in scope in step 4 and what is out of scope. I am only going to talk about a particular city. I am only going to talk about a particular region or particular type of vehicle, particular type of customer. All those things basically comes in the scope, so that you are clear. This is the problem, and I'm going to only attack this particular area. Right? Objective is the fifth one. Objective is what? I define the problem, I define the scope, and I tell what, my current CSAT score is this percentage, and I want to move it to this percentage. So that's the objective. You clearly say in quantitative terms, no beating around the bush. In quantitative terms, what is going to be the objective? Okay. All this a leader does. Okay. Now after that, he basically says 6A, 6B, 6C. What is that? He says, what is the current? What is the measure? DSAT, CSAT. What is the current result? What is the target result? So he actually puts that very clearly here as 6A, 6B, 6C. Once that is done, he goes back to his boss, which is number 7, and says, boss, you know what, this is what I have got. I want your approval. I want to actually engage myself into this project for the next, say, 3 weeks time. to develop step 9 and step 10 along with an implementation plan. Next 3 weeks, I'm going to actually spend my time. Please tell me, are you okay with that? Then I'll proceed. So he pauses here, takes a check. Once he gets a go ahead, then he starts with doing the root cause analysis. I've got more on the next slide about root cause analysis. So basically understanding why did this happen? Why did this happen? So the 5 whys is what he asks. Once step 9 is done, once the root cause is understood, once the truth is revealed, he then goes to the future condition. Future condition is all about, now I know the problem. How do you overcome that? This is where all the creative thinking comes, and I develop a solution. Once the solution is done, I develop a very clear implementation plan to tell, you know what, to develop a solution, I need this resource, this implementation plan. Say a typical Gantt chart will come at a step 11. Then he goes back to functional approval, says, I need budget. He gets to go ahead. He goes to go ahead for the implementation plan. He starts implementing it. So this is basically the framework for business process transformation. Now, I thought let me spend a little more time in step 9, because that's where maximum number of audience or people who are attending this will try to undermine the power of understanding the root cause. So this is basically an example which I thought I'll use, a very simple example of root cause. For example, say the Parliament building, okay, Vidhan Sabha building. So they say it is deteriorating. Now, why is it deteriorating? Because why? So basically, this is one tool. It's called the 5 analysis, because there's too much of washing happening to this building. Okay, why is there's too much amount of washing happening? Because there's excess bird droppings. Now, invariably, people will stop at level 1. There's too much of washing happening. We'll say, you know what, good idea. Let's stop washing, and hence it will not deteriorate. It will only make situations worse, because your Parliament building will actually become dirty. Or some people may go down to the next level saying, you know what, it's been washed because there are a lot of bird droppings happening, and stop at that level. Okay, what do we do for bird droppings? Probably, we actually have nets around the Parliament building so that birds do not come, or something to solve the bird dropping. Now, if you go a little deeper, you will find out that there are a lot of spiders for the birds to eat. Hence, we'll have to probably do something about the spiders. If you drill deeper, you will find out, there are a lot of flies, gnats or flies, which are there for the spiders to eat. Hence, these spiders are come. Acha, so now why are these flies coming? Because the lights are always on all the time. It's not being switched off at all. That's why there are a lot of flies and insects coming. If you just turn off if you just flip the switch off during daytime or during unneeded time, these insects will not come, and entire problem will actually be solved. So things could be as simple as this also, if you truly do this root cause analysis.
Mhm.
Right? So it is in a way that you truly face the problem, understand the root cause very simply analytically, but need the persistence to go to this level. It is in a way human attitude problem combined with the rigor of doing analysis, which will give you the desired results. So once you do the current situation, then you go to the future condition, telling what do I need to do about it. There are various techniques available. There are tools like 5M technique, Gemba, brainstorming, all those things. But essence is getting to the root cause, understanding why the situation is happening very clearly. Okay. So this was essentially the example of business process transformation which I wanted to give through the principle of lean. There is one more example or one more topic which I will cover besides A3 thinking. So like I said, for business process transformation to happen, we'll have to empower the frontline employees. This is not something that me alone, who is a process improvement guy, who will do. My responsibility, if I need to succeed as a process excellence person or an improvement person, is to make sure this A3 thinking is cascaded down to most people through the organization, so that they start using it. As process excellence, my name will not even come here. This will be a leader who will form his own team. Sorry, I missed the step 8. After the functional approval is done, he takes team members along. He does this, starts implementing it. So 1, 2, 8, and that's how it actually goes. Then he does this root cause analysis along with his team. Now this will be a lot of iterations, back and forth between the leader and the team member to get to this level. It may take a few weeks for you to get to this level, but it is very important for you to do it. And this is not a waste, by the way. Time being spent on doing this is not a waste, right? It is a process of iterating to know what actually the wastes are. And you get to the root cause and understand the problem. So that was the first topic. I'll move to some other, completely different topic. There are 10 such, areas which are there. Probably, some other day, some other time, given the paucity. So I spoke about this area, which is continuous improvement A3. Now we're going to talk about this area, which is org flexibility, right? So I'll complete this, Abdul Qadir ji, and I'll probably, take questions at the end, because I'm just conscious of time. It's already 1:30. I think it started at 12:45, if I'm not wrong.
You're late by 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah. So I'll probably continue for another 10 minutes or so. So org flexibility. So this is an actual example. Before I go there. So org flexibility basically are three types of so three areas wherein organization flexibility needs to be focused on. Now, why am I talking about org flexibility when I'm talking about business process transformation? See, unless your organization that you manage is efficiently structured, efficiently measured, you will not be able to derive value through the individual team member, or you will not be able to derive value through the structure you have created. So the three things that anybody that needs to focus on in org flexibility or making your organization flexibility is: one, how does the client's demand enter? How is it being heard or attended to by the organization? So if the client's demand itself is not being heard or listened to by the team properly with a clear voice, or if the client does not know whether you have known it properly or not, there's going to be inefficiency right up there. A classic example is you call up a call center and you actually try to explain the problem to them. 8 out of 10 times they'll not even understand what you're asking for, because they only have a script which has been taught in their mind. They'll only talk their script, and in the process you will just think that you're just wasting your time with them. And so that is how the client demand enters. That's step one. Step two is, how is your organization structured? When you mean structured, what is the hierarchy? What is the structuring of people? Is it 1:3? One leader is to 3 team members, one leader to 25. So this is very important, because if there is one team leader with say 50 team members reporting to him because you think you are trying to make it efficient, there is also disaster. Or if you have one team leader with say only 3 members or 4 members reporting to him for a structured operating environment. When I mean structured, not a complex organization, but a very factory mode type of organization, and that's also very inefficient, because a team leader can actually manage more. So the right optimal level of team leader to the executives needs to be mapped. For example, how many team members are there to a team leader? Very important. The third important aspect is, how are these individual team members performing and coordinating amongst themselves? So one is this, how does it enter? Second is, how does the team structure? Third is, how do these individual team members actually perform? Are they productive? And how do they interact with each other? So these are the three things for the organization to be flexible, so that the business processes can be conducted properly and the client basically receives value. Okay, this is completely different from the A3 topic that I talked about. Generally, business process improvement is seen only from a this RCA, I mean this analysis of 5i perspective. Invariably we miss this aspect, while we know these are all issues also. I'll give you a practical example of what happened in one of the teams. And I mean, this was a client, this was this is a very long so very old use case which I have, more than 10 years old, but still very relevant to various organizations I see. So this is a classic structure of an organization wherein I have, so all these humans that you see are resources. Okay, there is a L2 resource, there is an L1 resource, and these are all the clients which are actually there. Some random name I've given for the clients, mask names I've given. So these guys are basically raising tickets, IT tickets, okay, to these L2 resource. If these L2 resources are not able to solve, it actually goes to L1 resource. That's basically the way the organization is structured. Yeah. So now if you see what's happening is, assuming that these small figurines you see can do one ticket, sorry, yeah, so one ticket per day, this index. So this person is almost at the index level. He's actually doing 1.11 ticket per day. So his index is 1.04 against the thing. Whereas these guys are actually doing 1.75. These guys are doing twice the index. These guys are doing 1.32. Whereas this cohort is only doing zero point 0.2 of what they were supposed to do. For example, if one is the ideal demand, these guys are only doing 26 percentage what they were expected to do. So which was like a eye opener for the team lead and the head of the organization when we did a productivity analysis of these people. Matlab, large proportion of people are only contributing to 9 percentage of overall volume, whereas they are around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them in that particular group. So why did it happen? Because there were silos. All right, either the demand was less or they were not able to supply, either of these things, or this team was overloaded. This team was overloaded because the demand could be more, or these guys were doing high, could be again a demand supply mismatch. So there were silos here which were created. These guys were not doing what these guys were doing, and vice versa. There was one problem in terms of silos. Second thing is the training also was not adequate. So what we suggested was something like this. This center group of 0.26 needs to at least become 0.8. Let's actually forget one ticket per day. At least 0.8 they should do, right? Then the ticket volume can actually move to 300 per day. And how do we do it? You know what? Cross training can be done, or increase their training can be done, or make sure that so the flow of tickets is actually homogenized. Those can also be thought out. So that's how you can actually create. Again, easier said than done. It took a few weeks, months to get there, but somehow they realize there's a problem. They'll resolve it, because 0.2 is definitely not acceptable. And when somebody is able to do 1.75 and 2, how can these guys do 0.26? Uska matlab hai, this team is actually subsidizing this team in a way. So this needs to be avoided. So that was a solution that we brought about into this different topic of business process transformation, which is org flexibility. Of course, there were problems of team member ratio was there, variability was there, but probably these examples on some other day, some other time. But I thought, let me leave these two things before I wrap up. The way we go about doing it, or the way we are trying to do it is, probably take a fixed time period. First 6 weeks can be for doing the A3 and doing some part of this org flexibility in the first 6 weeks. Take a pause, start implementing in 10 weeks. So we break it into 16 weeks, 6 weeks for one particular reaching at a particular level, which is A3 thinking, and going about explaining the business cases. 10 weeks to implement. We start with one, then while we are doing it, we train somebody in the team. So that person who's trained does some other team, and that some other team becomes the change agent for some other team. Likewise, you create a series of waves, and a snowball effect can potentially be created by creating agents of change. Thereby I will try and achieve my empowerment of employees. You create these waves, snowball effect. I create multiple A3s through multiple waves, and I create a snowball effect. Right. I hope in the given span of time I was able to communicate what I intended to communicate if there was some lack of clarity, I think please feel free to ask questions. Anybody that's there, I'm gonna pause the presentation here by thanking Abdul Qadir ji for giving me this opportunity, and go back to the screen.
So thank you, Ganesh ji. Thank you very much. It's really a very intriguing and interesting presentation. Uh, Even though the topic you talk about the business process uh, excellence for transportation, okay, I think it is applicable for every business and every kind of setup. It's very interesting. You touch about some very key insights like A3, and then you talk about other concepts, fires, whys, and all. So that is fantastic, actually. It is very simpler. The good thing what I notice is you worked as a consultant, and also now you are working as an employee or a business leader of a company. So you have seen both ends. So it's not only a theoretical thing; you have done it practically. So I really like the way you presented it, and it's very interesting. In a given span of time, uh, it's very power packed presentation from you, Ganesh ji. So thank you very much.